Yeah.
Hello, everybody. Welcome to Reddit Roast number 31, I think we're at. I'm joining you from London. Cold. It's currently middle of October in London. So I'm wearing a gilet and I've had about 12 cups of tea and we'll be roasting as usual to try and stay warm. Okay, Malhag, bunch of profiles today that are aiming, I think, aiming quite high. People aiming for Harvard, Stanford that maybe shouldn't be. Some expired GMAT scores as well. We'll talk about how schools treat those. And a few investment bankers, which is quite a nice theme to focus on, given that I was in investment banking before. So, should we dive into the first profile?
Yes, we should.
Let's do it.
Profile number one, school suggestions.
Hmm.
Now, this is 29, female. She's got 324 GRE and a non-profit background. I've just taken the GRE and I'm compiling a list of schools to apply to. I fear I'm a bit new to the MBA admissions game, so any advice is good. Education, undergrad at Emory, magna cum laude, double major international relations and gender studies. That's not something we see quite often in the MBA world. Honors thesis with a GPA of 3.56. Also done a master's degree from U Chicago in international affairs, GPA 3.7 with a quant focused research thesis. Test scores, the GRE 166 verbal and 158 quant. That's a 324 score. But OP is a little mad because OP took it 5 years ago and got a higher score, got a 332, but it is expired. Uh,
Ah.
yeah, OP works as a senior data analyst. It's a non-profit. 3 years here, hoping this makes up for the low quant score. 1 year at AmeriCorps and 2 years at other non-profit internships with teaching abroad for 1 year. And
Hmm.
yeah, aside from the demographic that OP is already shared, OP is also LGBT. So what do you think of this profile, Sam?
Okay. Okay. Let's start academically then. So undergrad is the one they care about, really. And the I think this is the GPA of 3.56. I don't know what does that mean, quant focused GPA, or does that mean GPA? I'm not. I
I
think
think the
I think
honors
it means the
will
overall
honor.
GPA is 3.56, and it's the thesis that was quant
Yeah.
focused. Okay. So in line with the average, about 3.6 at M7. So let's see. Emory is respectable as well. I have a client currently interviewing at HBS who was an Emory grad, so definitely strong potential. Um, yeah, it's a shame about that expired GRE score, huh? I mean, that's a solid, what, 6, 8 points lower than potential. So it's a real shame they can't that she can't submit that. But with the quant score as it is, with the 324, the GRE score as it is, yeah, it's not ideal. It's also skewed towards verbal, and
Mm.
there's several mentions of quant in quant focused research thesis and quant focused thesis here as well. But ultimately, that test score is what they're going to be looking at, and if the quant's weak, it might be a little bit of a concern. So that's on the academic side. On the professional side, so 3 years of experience, I think we saw, was it 3 years at the non-profit? Before that was internships and teaching abroad. So
1 year at AmeriCorps.
yeah, okay. So okay, and then I'm struggling with the grammar of this. So yeah, okay. So 1 year of Americas. So about 4 or 5 years of work experience. So in terms of age, pretty nice. We're sort of at the right point in the career for an MBA. Quite a lot of job hopping though, maybe. Just in terms of the teaching abroad and then the internships and then the AmeriCorps and then non-profit. There might be a little bit of a pink flag there, especially given that I'm not seeing anything in the way of promotions. Now, it might be that
Mm.
there are some promotions in there as well, but moving jobs lots of times without ever getting promoted wouldn't be a good look. So I'm not sure exactly about that. We'd need to know more. And then I guess there's a question on the professional side. There's a question here about whether this is a non-profit that they've heard of, right? Just like in the corporate world, if it's a corporate company that the school have heard of that's making waves in a given industry, then that obviously helps for you as well. If this is a non-profit they've never heard of, it's not so strong. So bit of a question mark there as well. And then in terms of, yeah, there's this interesting sort of quant question mark. Like I get the feeling that OP is maybe a little sort of overcompensating for a lack of quant. It's like a quant focused here,
Yeah.
trying to convey this idea that there is a quant background, although yeah, despite the weak quant GRE score. So I'm not entirely sure what to make of that, but not ideal. The other thing is I'm not seeing any management responsibilities. Now, it might just be that OP didn't mention it, but I don't see anything in the way of, managing small teams or even managing interns, nor do I see anything particularly management related in the extracurriculars. I don't think you could expect to have much management responsibility as an intern, for example, either. So that on the management side and the promotion side, a couple of question marks there in terms of professional. Now, in terms of goals, I believe the goal is pivot into impact investing. I'm not sure if that was in the comments somewhere. Did we see that?
That was in the
Yeah, there
comments.
we
It
go.
was
I'd love to get
common
it
to me.
sustainable impact investing. So I'm a bit wary of that, to be honest. The reason why is people that break into impact investing very, very often are coming from a finance perspective, and they're looking to apply that finance experience to sustainability, to impact, to doing good. They tend to have quite hardcore finance experience, which that's the difficult bit to learn, and then they pivot across. And I'm not seeing finance experience here in the work. Data analysis,
Mhm.
yeah, sure, but that's quite a pivot from impact investing. So I'm not sure I love those goals. That's fine; those goals can change, but worth mentioning. And if you are serious, by the way, OP, in pivoting into impact investing, and that's really, really what you want to do, then you can compensate for not coming from an investment bank by, for example, signposting your interest in finance, take some courses. There's a great one called the FVMA, which several clients I've worked with in the past have had, which is basically a financial valuation and modeling course, which is quite well regarded. Like even if it's just a Coursera course,
Mhm.
you're serious about pivoting into impact investing, you need to show some finance interest. I'm not seeing any of that right now. Extracurriculars, not much in the way of extracurriculars, I don't think. So maybe there are some there that OP didn't realize how important it is and didn't mention, or maybe there aren't any extracurriculars, in which case there might be a bit of an issue. TBD, bit of a gap there. In terms of demographic, 29-year-old female, great age for an MBA. LGBT plus certainly helps because the school's looking for a diversity of perspectives, and that definitely will contribute to that. So I guess in terms of overall academics, I guess on the weaker side, professionally could be strong, but a couple of gaps. We're not sure about promotions, we're not sure about brands, but potential's there.
Mhm. Okay. Um, a question that OP has is which schools can OP apply to with this profile?
Yeah, I think the general level that I'm feeling is around T15, right? With the terms of the academics, in terms of the experience. Now, unless there's some really valuable stuff with this profile that I've not seen, I'm seeing around T15. Um, but even the academic stats, to be honest, are quite that GRE is a bit on the low side for them. So, still, Haas, Yale are the two that really kind of stand out as impact focused, very value that really value having the diverse cohort. LGBT will help, it will work in their favor there. Haas and Yale are the two that jump out for this candidate. But yeah, T15 is where I think OP should be applying.
Mhm. Okay. And what are OP's chances at a scholarship at a T15?
Uh, Fairly high. Look, I'm assuming OP's American, and so not an international student is kind of what I'm getting at here. They would qualify for the women, scholarships targeted at women. One,
Mhm.
there are LGBTQ scholarships as well that OP would qualify for. So pretty high in the scheme of things, and also impact background. So yeah, pretty high in terms of scholarships. I would say full rides are very, very hard to come by, but I would say 50 to 80K is perhaps on the cards quite comfortably with a good scholarship essay.
Okay. And what can OP do to improve their profile? OP, I see that is open to retaking the GRE. So
Hmm.
what do you think OP can really do here?
Yeah, I think that's the big one is retaking the GRE, really particularly focusing on the quant. Now, it's easy for me to say, just go and take the GRE again. Like I know how much work's involved, but OP took it a few years ago and scored a 168 verbal, 164 quant. So OP can do it, they have it in them. It's about putting in the work and getting back up towards that level. I think that's the key thing. I would say, if you're really struggling, consider hiring a tutor. We have a couple of great tutors in house. We can put you in touch with OP. But really, the retaking the GRE is the big one. I would say also you might want to research those goals a little bit more. That's something you can do at the same time. I'm not sure if the finance goals, the impact investing goals, are really credible for this background. Certainly, there are candidates out there who are better qualified for that role. So I'm a little bit wary on that. You'd be going against investment bankers basically, and I don't think that's something you want to be going. It's not really where you want to be at the battle you want to be fighting. So I would say research a little bit more. There are plenty of impact focused roles that aren't quite so hardcore finance related that you could get into. And then I think in terms of extracurriculars, again, not it might be that there are some there and they haven't been mentioned, but yeah, you're going to need some extracurriculars. Show them that you've got a life outside of work. That's the big thing, right? Show them that you do something outside of work. Give yourself some material for the essays that aren't career related. Show them that you've got a life, and that'll be really appreciated. Great. Should we move on to the next profile?
Yes, we should. Okay, profile number 2, Sam. What are my chances at M7 schools? So OP is applying in round 2. Demographics 31 male, based in London for the past 6 to 7 years, originally from Western Europe, and holds a British citizenship. Academics has a BBA and a MIM, Masters in Management, both from European schools, think HEC, HSG, Bocconi, did an undergrad exchange at a Canadian uni, and a double degree with a top Asian school. 3.8 GPA. Not clear if this is the undergrad or the postgrad, but GPA is mentioned as 3.8. GMAT 720. OP doesn't think it's amazing, but also does not plan to retake that. Work experience, 6 to 7 years, 4 years in M&A at a bulge bracket bank, and 3 years in TMT private equity with a focus on media and entertainment. Currently board observer for various PortCos, 360 involvement across strategy, M&A, budgeting, hiring, etc. Extracurriculars, some pro bono charity and recruiting work while in banking. Nothing crazy, OP says. Collaborates with his university as a guest speaker at lectures. Has also contributed to an academic book on corporate finance. Other info, OP has a scholarship from a large bank for academic performance, is conversational in 2 other European languages, and has some hobbies in media and the arts. Goals, entrepreneurship in M&E, especially gaming, education and music, and operational roles in the market. And OP is also considering investment roles in the US. OP is especially interested in Harvard, Stanford, and what do you think?
Yeah, okay. Right. Let's go as a former banker, OP, I'm going to come at this from with a bit of insight, I hope. So first let's talk about it academically. So a 3.8 GPA, I think we said. Yeah, around 3.8. Now that's obviously a converted GPA, but still, unquestionably strong. And if it's a top European school that they've heard of, that won't do any harm either. The scholarship always looks nice as well. They're funded by the bank, so that's great. 720 GMAT is a little bit below the 730 or so is what we like to say is the average of the M7s. So in the right ballpark. If you want to retake it, that's not going to be what keeps you out of business school. Then, interesting little note here that I want to highlight, which on the academic side, which is the MIM. Now, some schools do not like candidates for a master's in business administration that already have a master's in management. It's lots and lots of course overlap, lots of the same classes, a lot of professors teach both classes, etc. And so make sure you are filtering for this in your school research. So I won't go into that in too much detail because it won't apply to many people, but just bear that in mind, OP. That could be a big factor. So, in terms of work, then, on the older side, so 6 or 7 years of work experience, I think somewhere 31 years old, I think was said in one of the up
Yeah.
here, 31 years old. So that'll be more like 32 years at the time of matriculation. So certainly an older applicant. And for that, they're going to want to see some management experience. And there's no explicit mention of management experience, although currently the board observer might have some management experience. This is a typical weakness for banking and finance applicants, and I'm not seeing anything that particularly stands out as early management experience. So that could also be a bit of a pink flag there. Maybe the board observer gives some interesting stories in terms of like difficult decisions or insight into your own leadership style or maybe witnessing conflict. You could still use it for the non-career essays. It might kind of replace the leadership experience, but there's no getting around it. They're going to be looking at your resume for explicit signs of managing people, and it doesn't look like you have any. So that's not going to be a strength either. Okay. One thing that is a positive is the branding. I see bulge bracket here. M&A at a bulge bracket bank. That's definitely going to help. Bulge bracket, for those who aren't in finance, means it's like the MBB of investment banking. It's like the top tier of investment banks. So that's certainly going to help. Demographic, older, sure, not necessarily an issue. Male, right? Male investment banker, yeah, not breaking any stereotypes here. But on the good side, on the positive side, the European, UK, and
Mhm.
Euro aspect, both in terms of passports and work permits. Therefore, somebody who has a work permit in Europe and in the UK is pretty employable. And also, there's not many Europeans or Brits applying to top MBA programs, so that's acting in OP's favor for sure. Right, goals. Exploring entrepreneurship ideas. That's a shit goal. Cut that out. Let's not there's no evidence of any entrepreneurship experience. Don't start throwing yourself into the entrepreneurship bucket. We're gonna there are good entrepreneurship applicants. We're gonna have a couple in today's roast. This is not one of them. Operational roles and investment roles. Now we're talking. Those are roles that you're qualified for. Those are strong goals, and those I can see working. Okay, so overall, a solid profile needs quite a lot of polishing.
Okay. And OP is applying to top schools, Harvard, Stanford, Sloan. What are OP's chances at M7 and this tier of schools?
In my mind, OP is an M7 candidate, but
Mm-hmm.
I'm not seeing any signs of HBS or Stanford. So HBS are going to want way more in the way of leadership, right?
Mm-hmm.
Banking applicants I've worked with who've got into HBS have had really unique and strong leadership experience. The one that jumps to mind recently had uh, early management experience within the IBD, managed a small team way beyond, like, even though he was really young. That is the kind of thing they're looking for. Outside of work, he helped install wheelchair ramps in a nightclub, right? So that his friend who's in a wheelchair could come and rave with them. That's amazing leadership experience. That's the sort of thing that investment bankers need to have to get into Stanford, to get into Harvard, and I'm not seeing it here. So I'm really not feeling the HBS or GSB angle, but the rest of the M7s, the MITs, Whartons, Columbias, Booth, Kellogg of the world, game on. There, I think OP has a shot. And by the way, just as a throwaway, given those languages and the passports, etc., INSEAD and LBS will love you as well if you decide you want to stay in Europe and the UK.
Okay. All right. And speaking of those goals again, you said forget entrepreneurship. But how can OP position their goals, the operational ones especially? How can they position them strongly?
Yeah, generally the best practice here is to demonstrate, to tell a story that demonstrates why you're interested in these particular roles, why you're interested in operational roles, why you're interested in investment roles. So, an example would be while working as a board observer for a portfolio company, I witnessed or I helped lead the transition into a new, I don't know, CRM software that massively increased our operational efficiency. I really got a kick out of this operational side, and I want to focus my career full time on streamlining operations. So
Mhm.
my short-term goal is operations role at whatever industry aligns. Long-term goal is entrepreneurship, because entrepreneurship can be a longer-term goal. That's fine. So I hope that makes sense in terms of positioning it. The other side is the investment role. That's a bit less of a stretch, a bit less of a leap. I've been doing this investment work in Europe, and now I want to transition to the US, which is the leader of this particular industry I've been involved in, etc. That would also work as a short-term goal, and then again with longer-term goal as entrepreneurship. And again, if you want to tell a nice story about why the US is leading, or how OP has witnessed, worked on a particular worked with a particular portfolio company, saw growth in the US market, saw how the US market is leading this particular trend. I want to pivot into an investment role in the US to ride this wave. That kind of narrative would also make a lot of sense.
Okay. All right. Great. I think we've covered all of OP's questions. Sam, do you want to move on to profile 3?
Yeah, let's do it. Okay. So overall, what do I feel about profile 3? So, well, let's read through it first. Sorry, I'm getting ahead of myself.
A reality check for profile 3. Needs a no sugarcoating, really realistic take. I know you can do that, Sam. For top MBA programs like Harvard, Stanford, Wharton, Oxford, Cambridge, LBS, etc. Quick overview: 25, male, Southeast Asian, part of the LGBT community, will be taking the GRE soon, so no test score yet. Bachelor's degree in administration from a top university in my country, class valedictorian, record holder of highest GPA in my college, which OP is saying it's a 4.0 in the US scale. Experience: founded an education and training startup when OP was 19. It's grown to serve tens of thousands of students locally and abroad. Has also done a 1-year part-time work as research assistant to the National Level Public Policy Institute. Prior experience also includes academic tutoring and some marketing and operations support for an education company. So very education-oriented experience right here. Some leadership: I see roles in student organizations during college and high school, national scholarship, several awards for leadership and academic excellence. Also represented the country in a few youth and policy competitions. So OP has a few questions. We'll get into those, but what do you think of the profile overall?
Yeah, okay. Let's go academic first. So the record holder of GPA is obviously super strong. Don't get into conversions. Let the school do the conversions. They will know that, when they see your score in whatever country you're in, they will know how high that is. So definitely a strong start academically. We'll be taking the GRE soon. Obviously, it's hard to say more academically without that GRE, but for the top programs that OP talks about, certainly for those top US programs, I'd like to see that at least in the high 320s, that GRE. Oxford and Cambridge, LBS, might be able to get away with a little bit lower. Mid upper end 320s would be fine. So academically strong from what we can see. GRE is a TBD. Professional. Now, the founder of this education and training startup this is really, really interesting. So we've talked before about that applicant who didn't have any entrepreneurship experience and was thinking about having entrepreneurship as a goal. This is who you're going up against, right? Somebody who's grown a startup, an impactful startup to serve tens of thousands of students. You're not going to win against that. This is a very, very strong professional narrative. This is an example of someone who can have a short-term goal as entrepreneurship. Okay. Extracurriculars. I like this governance piece. There's a theme here emerging, right? This idea of helping with governance and development studies. This is really, really nice. The awards for leadership. This is nice. And then represented the country again in policy competitions. There is a policy theme taking shape here, which is really, really nice. A client I worked with last year got into GSB from a similar region, actually, with a very strong policy related theme. So that can definitely work. I'm really, 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 really excited about that. Demographic, LGBT helps. Southeast Asia, I think, is going to be slightly overrepresented. It depends where in Southeast Asia, but as I say, LGBT will help. Male, slightly more ORM perhaps. Okay. So overall, very strong profile. We're TBD on the GRE, but there's no signs here that OP is going to struggle with the GRE. So yeah, good luck, Godspeed. I think you're going to be going to do well.
Okay. So OP has a few questions here. Let's get into those. Which schools might be realistic given my academic and entrepreneurial background? I'm aiming for schools that offer a full ride scholarship with stipend for living expenses.
Oh, now things start to get a little bit iffy. So, okay, so I see that you're going for the schools with a brand in Asia, right? The schools with a university level brand in Asia. Oxford, people have heard of. They might not have heard of Said Business School, but they've heard of Oxford. Cambridge, they might not have heard of Judge, but they've heard of Cambridge. So that's the sort of the approach that OP seems to be taking on the schools, which is a very perfectly valid one, very common. Um, I would say just be aware of the visa aspect. There's going to be, particularly for your demographic, there's going to be question marks over the visa going to the US. So I guess that's why OP is split between the US and Europe and the UK. And that is a really good policy. And again, that is something a lot of people are doing. So great work there. Now, I'm wary of this scholarship focus. You've, it could be perceived, if you're not careful, the way this is going to look is a sense of entitlement, right? To think that you're going to come into a school like this and get a full ride scholarship. In other words, you're not giving them anything. I am the gift. What's that Game of Thrones meme of that he's like, I am the gift. It's like, what? You're going to come here, you're going to come to Harvard, you're not going to pay them a penny, and you want a tuition, you want a stipend as well. Like, you're just going to contribute like being there and that's going to be enough. Like there's a real sense of entitlement here that I don't like. Schools don't like either. So be very careful on that, OP. I would say though, while we're on the topic, I had a client last year who got a full ride to Oxford with a stipend after, but this is going beyond, you get the admit and then you're applying to other scholarships, external scholarships in particular. Sometimes the schools put you in touch with these, but still these are kind of external. That's where you need to be heading to get a full ride scholarship. And they're very, very rare. That was an exceptional client who got that, an exceptional applicant who got that full ride and stipend to Oxford. I think maybe OP is at that level, but there's definitely no guarantees. As my colleague our colleague Alex Zarganis says, when he was at Columbia, there were no poor international students.
Yeah.
International students pay the bills, and so I don't go into this process expecting a full ride. OP, you're gonna have if you're averse to taking on any debt at all, paying any of it yourself, an MBA is not for you. Okay. I hope that answers the question. It's a bit long-winded, but we got there in the end.
Okay, and then OP's next question is, what should I focus on improving in next year? Work experience, for example, or the GMAT GRE or the extracurriculars? What do you think can OP do?
Yeah, look, I think it's 100% GRE.
Mhm.
Take that test as many times as you need to. Just really throw yourself into it. I think, to be blunt, all the other bases are covered, right? OP has got this extracurricular, well, certainly the policy stuff can be framed as an extracurricular, great work experience, great GPA, great diversity stats. It's really just all about the GRE. And again, hire a tutor if you need to, take a sabbatical if you need to. That is the key. That's
Mhm. And do you think on the extracurricular side, I'm not seeing anything that's current. I'm seeing
yeah.
older extracurriculars.
I
Nothing.
think OP might have to flex the work a little bit to frame it as an extracurricular. For example, the school's asking their portals about activities. Um, you could frame these competitions as activities, and that can work. But yeah, let's be clear: activities and extracurriculars that are current and right now. Hello, Kitty, are worth a lot more than extracurriculars from undergrad. Why? Because everybody did extracurriculars during undergrad. It's really not nothing to brag about. It's not really going to stand out. What really impresses adcoms is extracurriculars that you've been doing while working and this community that you've been forming and community involvement while working. So there might be a bit of massaging to do there, but I think it's doable.
Okay. And OP has one last question, which is whether I should position myself more as a social entrepreneur or a public sector innovator.
Yeah. Look, it's hard to say without hearing the details of the stories. We need a lot more. I need a lot more background. I would spend, I don't know, half a dozen meetings, up almost 10 hours of calls with a client to get to this conclusion. So it's too early to say right now. What I would say is focus essay by essay, right? Just give the best story for the individual essay. Make sure your resume has got lots of numbers in it, quantify everything you can, and hopefully that positioning will kind of come through naturally. It's not something to do deliberately. In other words, don't force a certain positioning by putting in a crap essay, right? Focusing on a boring topic to try and force a certain positioning. That's shooting yourself in the foot. Choose the essay
Mhm.
topics first. Choose impactful essays. And if that means framing yourself one way or the other, so be it.
Okay. I think that's all of OP's questions. Are we ready for profile number 4?
Yeah, let's do it. Profile thought.
Okay. Profile 4. GMAT focus score for a part-time MBA at Booth or Kellogg.
Right.
So OP has been preparing for the GMAT for 3 weeks now. Again, this is another case of an expired score. OP's score of 322 expired a month ago. Only a month ago, OP didn't send it and is now practicing for the GMAT. Some practice test scores, and there's 615 on the first, 645 on the second. OP thinks they can do a 650 within 2 more weeks of prep. And Opie's having a child in January. So Opie wants to get done.
Congratulations.
Congrats. Opie wants to get done with the GMAT as quickly as possible.
Do not
Some
blame.
some yeah, some stats in there as well. Currently working as an AI engineering lead at a Fortune 20 company. 2 promotions in 3 years working in healthcare. Undergrad GPA 3.6, postgrad GPA 3.8, category ORM. Opie is an Indian male, total experience of 7 years working in engineering and boutique consulting. Goals: not looking to change domains, wants to be in healthcare only. No extracurricular activities that I can see, and OP is ready to explain why. Lost their father, diagnosed with depression, T2 diabetes at a very early age. Yeah, so few things in there, Sam. What do you think of this profile overall?
Quite a lot to get into here. All right, academically, 3.6 GPA. Not clear if that is converted. Where's the GPA? Yeah, here, 3.6 undergrad GPA. Not clear if that's a converted GPA. Either way, it sounds like it's more or less in line with M7 averages. Remember, only the undergrad GPA matters because schools are only contributing their undergrad GPA to the rankings, or the average to the rankings. So the graduate GPA doesn't affect their ranking, so they don't really care about it. So that's on the undergrad side. Now that 322 expiry, that's not so heartbreaking because a 322 is not a great score. The last example we showed where this happened was a great score that expired, and that's painful, but this isn't so bad. So OP, you're not losing anything really here. You wouldn't have got into a top school with a 322 anyway. So let's talk. Okay, demographics. So I believe Indian male, yeah,
Mhm.
and also an engineer. So this is an Indian male engineer. So it's about as ORM as it gets. So that doesn't help. Now, extracurriculars. This is interesting. So it, in the essay, OP's talking about maybe mentioning the lack of extracurriculars in the optional essay under the guise of I lost my father and got depressed. Now, I don't think that's quite the right approach. I'll explain what I mean by that. So, in the essays where people tend to use extracurriculars, for example, Harvard Essay 2 is a tell us about your leadership. They are, you might be able to use the story of coming back from depression in the place where other people are using extracurriculars, right? How did that coming back from depression, from losing your father, form and forge your leadership style? While other people are writing about some sports activity that forged their leadership style, you're perhaps writing about how this personal experience created your leadership style. So it might be that you can work a way around not having extracurriculars by using this story in the option in the main essays. Probably not a place for the optional essay. Why? Because the context for the optional essay is tell us about things that have impacted your GPA generally, your
Mhm.
grades, or even your promotions. There's nowhere in the extracurriculars really does it say explain why you haven't got any hobbies. It doesn't say that. It says explain extenuating circumstances that have impacted your academic or professional progress. So this wouldn't really fit, I don't think. So all this to say that the losing the father should probably come under a leadership development type essay, not in the optional essay. Okay, right, I digress. Professional. Very sexy title. AI engineering lead at a Fortune 20 company is going to grab the attention of
Yeah.
applicants, particularly at the moment where they're looking for every exposure they can get to AI. They will love this. And the Fortune 20 company, we don't know which one it is, but we know it's going to have a strong brand that they will have heard of. Add to that the two promotions in 3 years, they're really going to like that professional experience. So that's great. In terms of goals, yeah, fine. The staying in healthcare, working in healthcare and staying in healthcare, totally makes sense, totally fine. Typically, the goal might be pivoting from an AI engineering lead into something a bit more strategic, like a corporate finance role, maybe, or sorry, corporate strategy role, I should say. Uh, a product management role would also be on the cards, or even a business development role. Those are all classic post MBA roles that engineers often pivot into. So it sounds like that would make sense. Depends on the company exactly, but those hopefully give you some inspiration. So overall, a solid profile because of the promotions at a good brand in AI engineering, not especially strong on the other side, I don't think.
Mhm. Okay. And OP's mentioned that he's practicing for the GMAT now. Has a few GMAT practice scores there. What is the minimum GMAT score that OP should target for a little scholarship and a boost to his profile?
Yeah, so fair question. Let's assume that you're targeting M7s, which I think is a reasonable goal. Not guaranteed, but it's certainly a goal. Targeting M7s. I'd like to say that, well, actually, sorry, let's be specific. If you were targeting M7 full-time programs, and you're not, you're targeting part-time MBAs. If you're targeting full-time MBA programs at M7s, I would want to see a very high 600s, right?
Mhm.
This is the first round that we really have any data on the new Focus Edition and how schools are seeing it. And let me tell you that our clients who have been interviewed to Harvard have been getting are in the 695 or so. So OP GMAT score for M7s would be something like 685, that kind of area, 675 maybe. But OP is targeting the part-time MBA programs, and those have a lower bar. OP, you could get away with a 655, even a 645 potentially. Basically, where you're scoring right now, treat that as a floor, I would say. Anything above a 645, I think you're in a good spot.
Mhm. Okay. And what else can so I see that OP is targeting said he wants a little bit of a scholarship and a little boost to the profile. What can OP do to improve his profile?
Yeah, look, the key thing that I'm not seeing really is community involvement. Now, often this comes from the extracurriculars, as we've talked about. OP doesn't really have any extracurriculars, but I'm not seeing it in work either, right? Often you can build community within work by, for example, setting up groups that's for support to support certain demographics, etc. There are community things you can do within the workplace or in extracurricular world. I'm not seeing either.
Mhm.
So to me, the big gap, the big thing that the client that OP can do to build and strengthen their profile is showing some angle that builds community, showing some element of building community. Now that might be starting an extracurricular, it might be starting an employee resource group within your organization, and then organizing an event, for example.
Mhm.
Showing some community building activity is the key gap that OP is missing, that Kellogg and Booth both value. all schools value. And I'm not seeing it anywhere. So that's the big thing. And that can be done in the space of, 6 months.
Mhm.
And even with a kid, it's not impossible.
Okay. All right. I think we're ready for our last profile of the day, Sam.
Let's do it.
Cool. What are my chances at HBS, GSB, and Sloan? Demographics 28, male based in London, state school educated in quite a rough part of the UK as well. Academics, econ undergrad from a UK target-ish uni, think Warwick, Bristol, Nottingham, upper second class honors around 65%, and some genuinely extenuating circumstances that impacted OP's grades. GMAT 730. Work experience, OP has 6 years in total, 3 years in investment banking at a European bulge bracket bank, worked on some extremely high profile deals. Also did 1 year of internships in IB at two of either Goldman Sachs or the like. Spent the last 2 years in a relatively low-key corporate VC, and now I head up the fund. Extracurriculars, founded and ran for 2 years a finance society at uni that's now one of the largest and most active on campus. Post MBA goals, want to get into a top tier VC or a growth equity fund. What's your take on this?
Yeah, mix. Let's give it the upvote. Okay, academic first. So that's a pretty tier two set of unis there in terms of brand. So it's not particularly helping. A 2-1, an upper second class honors, 65% is okay. That translates to about the average of the M7, so it's okay. It's not, again, smashing any lights out. Now, the extenuating circumstances might mean there's a strong optional essay there to kind of explain that, and we can talk a little bit about exactly what that would look like. But academic, meh, I think is the technical term, quite beige. Yeah, with a 730, which is also bang in line the average of the M7. So that's probably the GMAT's solid. I think the undergrad may be a little bit below expectations, but okay, not certainly not keeping OP out on its own. Demographic: 28-year-old male, ex-IB. I'm not seeing based in London, state school educated in the UK. So let's assume OP is British. So British is underrepresented in MBA world, but 28-year-old male investment bankers are not. So I'd say roughly neutral, maybe a little bit overrepresented on the demographic front. Extracurriculars. Now, as I've rambled on lots and lots of times on these roasts, extracurriculars that are during university count less than extracurriculars that are more recent. So so as far as we know, OP has no extracurriculars that are current. That is not going to help, particularly for those top schools that really value leadership. And I know the answer. Everyone else says, yeah, but I've been working really hard. Yeah, well, tough. The people that get into Harvard, Stanford have got leadership inside of work and outside of work. They call it habit of leadership, and I'm not seeing it. So I'd say extracurriculars on the weaker side. Now, professional, great branding in terms of these bulge brackets, right? A couple of internships at the Goldmans and the like, and worked at a European bulge bracket as well. Again, bulge bracket means it's like the MBB of the investment banking world. So very, very strong work experience there. Not seeing anything in the way of promotions. I guess that 3 years of full-time in investment banking, there is a couple of promotions in there. That will obviously help. But if there are not, and OP is still an analyst, that will be an issue. So TBD on that. What else? Yeah, I guess what OP is doing right now, which is heading up a corporate VC fund, bit of a question over whether OP really needs an MBA. Right? That's not a particularly, I mean, that's a great role to be in already. It's arguably a post MBA role. So it kind of begs the question, why do you need an MBA? And so the goals that OP has mentioned is get into a top tier VC or growth equity fund. Yeah, I think there might be a question mark over that. They're going to think, do you really need an MBA for that? MBA's networks in VCs and equity funds, as we've talked about in the past, are not particularly strong. It's not like it's not like investment banking and McKinsey and Bain who send representatives to the business school to recruit. VC doesn't do that. So you're on your own. You're going to be networking on your own, and you could almost do that just as easily without an MBA. So lukewarm on the goals. So overall, a strong profile, but maybe not as strong as OP thinks.
Mhm. Okay. And yeah, coming to that, are these schools realistic for OP's profile?
Look, I'm not seeing Harvard, Stanford. I'm really
Hmm.
not. There's none of that special sauce that Harvard and Stanford applicants have. When I see those candidates, there's I we've had at least half a dozen clients this year who are currently right now interviewing for Harvard, Stanford, and there's always and multiply that back by many years and many rounds. There is always something unique and strong and kind of attention grabbing. Add that to the habit of leadership that I referred to, this idea of setting up extracurricular activities, setting up non-profits, things outside of the office that show real leadership. Not seeing that either. So I'm not seeing Harvard and Stanford, but Sloan and the rest of the M7s, those are on the cards perhaps.
Yeah. And OP has a question about his grades. I feel like my grades during undergrad might affect my chances, but does my work experience make up for it?
Look, unfortunately, the short answer is no. The way that schools consider very largely your profile is you need to have a strong academic profile and professional profile. Now, as you go down the school ranking lists, you can get away with it a bit more, but for Harvard and Stanford, no way. You need to have both academics, which is basically an average of your GMAT and your GPA, and very strong work experience. Now, I think OP has strong work experience. I think that's clear. But on the academic side, no, those are not strong, and no, they will not be compensated for by strong work experience. I'm afraid you're going to need both. Um, so, generally the way people do this, if they offset a relatively mediocre undergrad grade, is with a really strong GMAT. OP's GMAT is strong, but it's about average for Sloan, GSB, HBS. It's not going to really compensate for that undergrad.
Okay. And we did touch upon this a little bit earlier, but the comments are saying OP doesn't need an MBA. He can just internally network. What do you think about this?
I think OP knows this already. If OP is head of a fund, he's obviously got a close eye on the funds that are around and which ones are recruiting and who's doing the recruiting, etc. OP knows that. And to be really blunt, I get the feeling that this MBA is a bit of an ego boost. Is the pursuit is the reason here. OP does not need an MBA to get into post MBA goals. He's only talking about the Harvard, Stanfords, Sloans of the world. There's no indication anywhere of any like genuine appetite for any learning, right? It's I I'm I can see where those comments are coming from for sure.
Okay. All right. I think
Actually, let
that's.
me just build on that. Let's be productive. Let's be constructive. So,
Mhm.
what do I mean by that? So, people who genuinely thrive in MBA programs are people who have got this real appetite for learning. HBS recently added a curiosity essay to to explicitly call this out. And the admissions evaluators can spot it a mile away as well. These people who are just, hunting a piece of paper, that hunting for the brand. I'm not seeing that genuine lack of that genuine curiosity, that genuine interest, that genuine need for an MBA to reach the post MBA goals. And that's why I'm cynical about this. And the schools will see that.
Okay.
Right.
So what can OP really do then in that case to really position themselves strongly for the
Yeah.
school?
I mean, I think build up that habit of leadership, take on some extracurriculars, more recent extracurriculars. I think probably the lowest, the least lift extracurricular that OP could do is is some sort of mentorship work, right?
Mhm.
OP's heading up a fund based in London. There's heaps and heaps of people who would appreciate having OP as a mentor. In fact, if I remember correctly, there was even a comment about this in one of the here. I'm a master's student in London. Do you mind if I PM you for a coffee chat? Let's give that a little upvote. You go, guy. Let's go. Um, the least lifting that OP could do to kind of get some sort of extracurricular points is probably mentorship work.
Mhm.
Relatively light, into a couple of hours a week, maybe. And then all of a sudden, you've got a big, strong extracurricular that you can make noise about, that you can write essays about. That's probably the extracurricular factor. And then the other thing on, as I say, on the undergrad grade is the GMAT. If OP really was determined to go to Harvard, Stanford, then a kind of 705 type GMAT score is what would strengthen their profile.
Yeah. Okay. Great. I think that's all of our profiles today. Should we move on to our last bonus question?
Yeah, let's do it.
Now, this is a bit of an unusual one. What was the most unexpected way you changed during your MBA? So, after finishing an MBA, most people often like to talk and discuss about the jobs they got lined up, or their salary, or their network. But what I'm curious about is the internal changes that are not so easily noticed. For the current students or alumni, what was the most surprising or unexpected change you noticed about yourself during your MBA?
Yeah, it's a nice question. I think from a let's go professionally first a little bit. So I went into my MBA as a banker, and I was hoping for some sort of academic reassurance that the financial system is not kaput. And I
Mm-hmm.
didn't get it. In fact, the I really some of the sort of the almost brainwashed approach to finance that top universities teach was quite disillusioning for me. So that was one thing. That's from a sort of academic perspective. The other thing, from a more personal perspective, which is I think what OP is getting at here, is it absolutely annihilated any imposter syndrome that I had going into the program. Um, I met some of the smartest people across, in Oxford University, in the MBA, but I visited and networked with a bunch of other top MBA programs as well, and basically kind of came out of it thinking, meh, they're not that smart. These people around me, these MBAs around me, they're smart, of course, but they're not that smart. And so that gave me the confidence to take on pretty much anything that is coming up that came up. I felt like anything that other MBAs were doing, I could perhaps tackle as well, and that was a real massive confidence boost. And I guess maybe it sounds a bit arrogant, but yeah, nobody who knows me personally will be remotely surprised by that. And I think that mindset shift was really important for me coming into, well, setting up Sandwich Consulting. It was a massive shift. Hey, other people are setting up admissions consultancies. I can do it as well. And that is, I don't know if I'll ever be able to go back to a 9 to 5 now, but after that. So that is a really tangible mindset shift that I hope contributes a little bit to this discussion. I see there's lots and lots and lots of comments here in the thread. So that's my 2 cents.
I love the one that's the top voted. It just says learned about the three financial statements. The most
Right.
unexpected way that you.
That's tongue in cheek, obviously, because the financial statements you can learn from, Coursera. So
Yeah.
I think, yeah, that's why Reddit loves a bit of sarcasm. And so do I. So upvoted. Great. Look, great roast today, Mal. Really, really nice, and it's nice to have your cat involved as well. And
Yeah, he won't stop jumping up. He wants to roast as well.
he wants to be involved. He can be more involved. Tell him to submit a profile. You can do that by DMing us through Reddit is one way you can connect with us. Connect with me on LinkedIn as well. I'm very active on LinkedIn. Samweeks.com is the website, and obviously you can like and subscribe to our YouTube channel to follow more roasts as we pick apart people's profiles, hopefully constructively, and send them on their way to a top MBA program. Mal, great to see you again. I'll see you next week.
See you next week, then.
Yeah. See you. Bye.